All right, welcome to the podcast. This is episode 3 of the Legacy of Tyr podcast. And I'm Jordan, one of your hosts for tonight. And we have with us Carrie and Nick. You guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hello, it's Carrie here. And I believe we're here with Nate tonight. And Chaz who's usually with us, is working tonight. He is in Navy land out there doing his Navy thing.
Hey, my name's Nate. I've been with the tribe for a while, almost 3 years now, if I'm correct, Harry. And I'm not actually with. I'm part of the tribe, but I'm isolated. I'm all the way out in North Dakota. So I'm an Army vet, deployed at 2-3 FA back in '03 to Iraq. Had the honor of serving with them. Uh, yeah, I don't know what else to say about myself. So there you go.
All right.
Well, aren't you working on like some children's books?
Yeah, actually, the books. We're just waiting for the printer and my publisher to stop arguing, so we can get those printed and get those on the market. Legacy of Tyr will be getting, I think it's 15% of sales of each one of those books, of profits, and then I'm writing on a book for much older kids now too, but that's neither here nor there. And then once these kids' books have been out in the market for about 2 years, I'll be writing another set of 9 stories. And what they are is I took the old stories, like the beginning, the Great Wolf, Sif's Hair, and I broke them down to make it easier for kids to understand.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I think it's pretty neat that heathenry's getting to the point where we're actually getting children's books and stuff. I know Grimfrost has a children's book now as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to have children's literature out there about our faith.
Hmm.
Even for people who like want an easier read, because some of the books out there are a little bit of a hard read for some people.
Oh yeah, most
You
definitely.
know, and the best way just to get like the highlights of the story is like read a more easier version of it. You know,
Yeah.
Hmm.
um, so I'm excited for you to come out with these books.
The
I
other one
really am.
that's the other one that's coming out with that one will be actually before the stories. Is I teamed up with my publisher herself. She did the version for older kids, and I did the version for the young kids. And what it is, pardon me, is the runes and the sounds they make, what they used to represent, whether it be an ox or money or whatever, uh, the sounds that they make when you're speaking them, and the names of the rune, and that way kids can get familiar. Like, pardon me, I can't even speak tonight.
That's
Kids can
fun.
get to know the runes, and so it won't be so hard for them as it was for most of us when we found it later on in life.
Hmm. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
it's definitely easier to learn things like that as a kid and like get like brought into it early. It's like speaking any language. It's easier to learn when you're a kid.
hmm
I
Yeah.
definitely wish I
My
had
first
that.
set of runes was that, what is it? They're porcelain, and they have like the blank rune. You know what I'm talking about?
Hmm.
And they come in that set with a book. And I didn't like those. Like the porcelain just didn't feel right with me, and I always break them. And and on top of that, like the whole blank rune thing is just, to me, is just silly.
Is
Hmm.
my first set of runes were these little wooden discs I cut off a branch and used carving tools, and I carved the runes in. Well, I cut the heck out of myself, and I actually ended up sending those up to Nolan in Canada, and he sent me down a gift for my kids for Yule. We traded up that way, and yeah.
Nice. I also made my first set, but I cut a branch up into like little rounds and wood burned them.
See, that's what I should have done. It would have
Hmm.
kept me from losing
Wood
so much
burning.
blood.
You got to blood anoint your runes, right? You got to make them personal. You got to personalize them. There you go.
Yeah.
Adds character. All right, so I think the main topics we'll be covering tonight is we'll be covering the Alfire, the elves, and Freyr, and how he's over the elves pretty much, and we'll be covering wights and pretty much like all the just the mythological things in between. Yeah, Carrie, you want to kick us off on the elves and Freya? Carrie?
Can
Oh,
you
there you
guys
go.
hear me?
Yeah,
My
there you go.
mic was muted.
Oh, that's fine.
I totally lost my notes that I had up, so you might need to help me out here.
Oh, we got you.
Like, I had everything put together, and my computer decided to start doing updates.
Oh boy, perfect timing.
Yes, great timing.
Alrighty, well,
Uh,
I can start us out. So the elves are they're basically like really luminous beings, and they're pretty prevalent in Norse mythology overall. They come from the realm Alfheim, and the god Freyr, the Vanir god Freyr, is lord of the elves. He's like lord of the home. He's the lord of Alfheim, and in a lot of the Norse poems, like a lot of the old poems, he's they use the word elves to designate the Vanir as well, which is pretty interesting. But there's a lot of sources that speak of them as different entities, like separate entities as well. So that the identification of them was pretty misguided there in a lot of the old
Well,
interpretations. You got to mix
it's
up a lot.
kind of like with the jouts. There's the jouts, and then there's other references that break them down into different classifications as jouts. It all depends on who was doing the writing. So
Yeah, I think a lot of that got mixed up in translation with because Christians wrote most of our literature, so I think a lot of that got mixed up in translation as well, most likely, because it had a lot to do with the spiritual side of things, so they probably didn't understand it and just kind of mixed them up.
no.
well,
Which
what
I
I
believe
find
happened.
interesting is that, like, the belief in, elves, the Alfar, fairies,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I mean, it's still very widely believed in. You know, not just in our lore, but, like, throughout Europe, even worldwide as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Iceland is a very good example. I watched a documentary not too long ago, and it talked about how, like, in some cases, highway projects are even put on hold if they come across, like, rocks that were said that elves live in.
That's pretty
Um,
neat to know that.
and the same for Newfoundland, Canada. Very, very superstitious about the elves and the fairies and whatnot. There's a story out of that I saw on a show called Creepy Canada when they used to live up there, and it talked about, like, this marsh that had, like, a path or a trail through it, and mothers used to put pages of the Bible, pennies, and breadcrumb or pieces of bread in their child's pockets before they sent them out to play, so that they aren't abducted by elves or fairies.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, there's also a house they started building, and they call it the half house, or and they stopped building it, and it's, like, right during, like, it was expanding because a fairy ring appeared in the yard, like those mushroom rings.
Oh yeah.
So they just stopped building it and finished what they had, so it looks like
Oh
half
damn.
of a house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well damn.
But it's amazing because, like, I grew up, with this fascination of such things, and I know some people don't believe in them, and they just, like, well, it's just part of, like, the philosophy and the lore is, like, lessons or whatever. But I mean, if you do some of your digging, and if you're getting to, like, the paranormal side of things, and read on people's encounters with such things, I mean, it can't be just a made up thing. I mean, like I said, we're not the only culture that believes in them.
Oh yeah, they're pretty widespread across like a lot of different cultures.
Everything from China to the Native Americans and everything, everywhere in between, there's something.
Yeah, like I know something really interesting is some North Carolina legends. There's the Brown Mountain Lights, which were basically theorized to be Indian spirits that had died in battle returning home. I thought that was always really interesting, and I like to see them as like whites just traveling around, or elves possibly. I think that's a good way to explain it.
There was a couple places up in Canada when I used to live up there. One of them was this park, and it's called Lions Park.
Hmm.
And you could go down there at night, and it like the Credit River runs through it.
Hmm.
It's up there in Ontario, and you could walk around at night along like the river bed, like in the tree line, and you start seeing like these flashes of blue and red and green, throughout the trees there. And we actually brought a few people with us, and we saw them.
Hmm.
And we thought that was pretty cool. And then we looked online, and a lot of people have had that strange encounter. And then there's like I think it's mentioned in Terry Boyle's Haunted Mississauga. Talks about, I think it was a golf course out there in Mississauga or something, and it said that there's been stories of elves that have been spotted, and they're described as having long ears like a rabbit and stand about 3 to 4 feet high.
Hmm.
And there's been some writings of old British soldiers that have had encounters with these things, and they journaled about them.
Hmm.
So it's not like, again, it's not just Europe. There's stories of them here in North America as well.
Well, as far as the lights in Europe go, there's this synagogue that got bombed out during World War II. On Saturday, well, mass was in session, or temple was in session, and about 8 or 9 times a year, it just randomly lights up with pink and green and blue lights in the windows. Nothing coming out the roof, out of the seal, where the roof was. And whenever somebody gets close to it, the lights just suddenly die, and no one's ever been able to explain it. So, and
Hmm.
I've seen that happen firsthand. So it's pretty amazing.
That's crazy. I know whites in lore, they like a lot of people interpret them differently. Like some people think they're like the land whites are like spirits that people that have died in that area, or people that have a strong connection with that area, and they basically just roam around and take like care of the area. And some people believe them to be like fairies or just some sort of magical creature.
Well, I believe there's different kinds,
Hmm.
just like there's different kinds of, flavors of Skittles that are out there, they all kind of come from the same source, I guess. Now, didn't I send you over an article that had some stories on it? Maybe we can read a couple of those
Oh yeah, the elf
about
stories.
encounter. Yes,
Oh boy.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, we have. I think one of my favorites is the what the hell are you looking for story, and it's basically a story of a farmer's son late at night he's having trouble sleeping one night, and he noticed there was a bunch of light in his room. He was kind of like laying in bed like, why is there so much light in this room? So he looks to the doorway and sees this young elf woman walk in holding a candle, and elves are naturally like luminescent, like they're bright. So she walks in and she's like well dressed, braided hair, looks real good, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing here? What are you looking for? Go away." And she leaves the room real quick. So he gets some good sleep after that. Wakes up in the morning and tells his parents, and his parents are just like, "That was probably an elf priestess. Why are you yelling at her?" And they apparently got pretty upset with her or with the son because he was yelling at a high-ranking member of the elf community, like the way he described she looked. So I thought that was a pretty funny story. He's just yelling at elves, and it's pretty cool in lore how elves are basically they can give illness to humans, and they can also cure it. And they mostly do the curing when a sacrifice is given to them, like when you set out sacrifices for them. So I thought that was pretty funny that he's yelling at an elf and knowing that they can give illness and other ailments. We also got the don't stick your hand through an elf's window.
Oh Lord.
Which, taken out of context, I probably wouldn't stick my hand in an elf window either. But it's kind of a creepy story about elves actually, and like how you're not supposed to trust them. So it's basically about these three children one time. and they were playing on this small mound, and the youngest girl stuck her hand in a hole in the mound and said something along the lines of "Put in my palm, man who shall not see," which is apparently some sort of old like folk riddle you're supposed to say when you stick your hand in an elf window. And when she took her hand out, there was a large golden button that had been placed in her hand. And the oldest child saw it and thought he's got to try for himself, you know? So he sticks his hand in, utters the same words as the girl, you know, except like, gold prize that she got, but apparently the elf was a bit sadistic. So instead of giving the child some gold or anything, the child's arm became withered and deformed.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
We're gonna dare Overby. We're gonna dare Chaz to
Oh my
do
goodness.
that next gathering.
He will too. We got to go find an elf home and have him stick his hand through the window. So
like and subscribe if you want to see Chaz stick his arm in an elf
yeah. So if you're in Iceland and find some elves, don't trust them. Apparently.
I found this article. It was written by the South China Morning Post, and it talks about the elves in Iceland. Back in 1971, elves disrupted a construction of a national highway from Reykjavik to the northeast. The project says, they say that the project suffered repeated unusual technical difficulties because they didn't want a big boulder that served as their home to be moved to make way for the new road. So they made an agreement in the end that the elves would leave the stone for a week and they would move the stone for 15 meters. This is probably the only country in the world whose government officially talked with elves, said one historian. But Iceland is not the only country that is home to elves. It's just that the Icelanders are more receptive to accounts of their existence. That's pretty cool. Like that's one of the things I want to kind of do if I ever get to go to Iceland, you know.
Like check out some of the more mythological stuff there.
Yes, like
yeah, they definitely still have a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. So does Newfoundland. So if you can't get to Iceland, check out Newfoundland. Not that it's any closer for some of y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, after you get 10 hours away, it's kind of all the same difference.
I'll tell you what, though, Newfies know how to tell a good story. They sure do.
Got to get some Newfoundlands on the podcast.
I can get a couple. I got some very dear friends up there in Newfoundland that I've met years ago, and we still keep in touch.
That'd be pretty cool to have them on and tell some really nice stories about some elves.
Yeah.
Or some mythology in general.
I just hear her. She's like, sure, yeah, whatever, sure.
They won't tell those stories.
No. There was another story. There was a woman who knew a fisherman who was able to see elves, who would also go out to sea to fish. And one morning in February 1921, he noticed they were not heading out to sea, and he tried to convince the other fishermen to not go out either, but the boss would not let them stay on shore. Mm-hmm. That day there was an unusually violent storm in the North Atlantic, but the fishermen who had heeded his warning stayed close to the shore. All returned safe and sound. 7 years later, in June 1928, the elves did it, not put out to sea, which was confusing people, because there'd never been a fierce storm at that time of year. Mm-hmm. And once again, another storm came. So this is like, not stuff from like the 1700s, the 1800s. We're getting into like, the 1900s here. And there was after that, in 2002, there was a woman in her 80s who ran into a young teen who claimed to know her, asking him where they had met. He gave her an address where she lived 53 years ago, where her daughter claimed she had played with an invisible boy.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, like this is like 2002, like 1928. So, I mean, the lore has not died at all.
Mm-mm.
Not at all.
I know there's accounts of people like reincarnation as elves as well, which I've always thought was really interesting. I think there's a few stories where uh, it's happened. Like after humans die, they will be become elves, like reborn as elves, and
Oh,
like
that's
yeah, it's I thought that was pretty interesting, and like how basically sacrifice and like kind of worship of elves will overlap with ancestral worship as well. Like a lot of the same like ceremony and sacrifices are like the same.
I've read that somewhere too.
Hmm.
Not too long ago, I've come across that, and I think that's very interesting. I also feel like, okay, let's say these things do exist, right?
Hmm.
And I'm sure, no, you're not gonna get up in the middle of the night for a midnight snack and open your freaking refrigerator and see little elves dancing around the ketchup bottle. I don't think it kind of works like that. But
Are you
Just
telling
didn't
me?
want to join tonight.
what meds did the VA? Whoa. No, but I'm being serious because you have those people out there,
Hmm.
and I do get some of these callers, like they want a reading, and they're like, "Oh, there's a elf or a demon in my refrigerator," or "Oh my God," and I just kind of don't know really what to do in most cases. But let's say these things do exist, okay? Um, and I believe they do, and I do have a story about that. Um, do you think that people have these interactions with these beings, um, like let's say Iceland, Newfoundland, where it's like a common belief? Do you think that they have these beliefs because they believe in them, and it attracts them to come out of their hiding?
I think that's pretty probable. That and I feel like since they kind of like they're in with the mythology, I really feel like it like they just know what to look for, or they're actually out there like looking for it more, or they know the signs of it, like because they grew up
Well,
around it. So
Or
I
they
think
have a
another
relationship with it?
yeah,
I think another
exactly.
part of it is these elves live. If you read the lore, these elves live for centuries upon centuries,
Mm.
and I'm sure they can recognize bloodlines, which within itself would lead to more contact, just because their ancestors and the bloodlines carried down. The ancestors worship the elves, so why wouldn't the elves believe that the kin, you know?
Also aren't worshiping. That's very true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean the worship of elves actually persisted centuries after the Germanic people, fully converted over to Christianity. And like
Well,
there's actually like old medieval laws prohibiting like worshiping elves and stuff like that.
Oh wow.
And like the worship
I
of elves actually lasted longer than the worship of the gods in most Christian areas.
but the sacrifices to elves were so much smaller; it was harder to catch people doing
Exactly.
it.
It was like just really small things.
Now, I have a crazy story,
Hmm.
and this is just absolutely nutso. So just take it or leave it for what it is. All right. But years ago, years and years and years ago, when I was in the Air Force, um, I remember I was exploring paganism and stuff, and I met some local Asatru people. Um, and this was my first introduction to Asatru, but I was Wiccan at the time, so like back then, I should have listened to everybody else around me. Not bashing Wiccans, I'm just referring to where I've come to this day, as we speak. There was a guy, I think his name was David, and all I remember is he had a husky named Athena or something, and he lived in Hampton, and he had gotten this house, and we were talking a little bit. We were just friends. There was no hanky panky or anything going on, and I worked night shift, and the topic came up at some point, and I can't remember how, but he told me, he's like, "Hey, you need to swing by my house some evening and get here right before 10 o'clock." And I'm like, "Huh?" He says, "Get this kid here. Just make sure you are here at my house before 10 o'clock. Not at 10 o'clock, before 10 o'clock." I'm like, okay. So I wanted to check this out. I'm like, okay, well, what's going on here? And he was a good guy. He wasn't going to do anything to me. So one evening I went over and I sat on the couch and he said, make sure you're watching the kitchen. And I'm like, okay. So 10 o'clock came and there was this flash of red light, and it was so fast, like a camera flash, that darted from one set of cabinets to the other on the opposite side of the kitchen. And I'm like, what the hell was that? He's like, it happens every night at 10 o'clock. And then tomorrow it will go in the opposite direction. I'm like, that is crazy. And he's like, yeah, go look at the cupboards. And the one where, from the direction it went from to, the cupboard door was ajar a little bit.
Mhm.
And you try closing it, it would pop back open. You try closing it, it would pop back open. And the next day it would be opposite.
Damn.
Yeah. So he says, he's like, I think I have a house white. I'm not sure. I'm like, I don't know, but this is the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life.
It's an angry housewife that's trying to fix the cabinets because one won't stay closed, so he has to use all his energy to keep one closed one night, and he switches.
Well, yeah. Well, the one that it's in, he doesn't want to close.
Yeah.
Like, you could tape it shut and it would pop right back open, but the next day it wouldn't be open. The opposite one would be. It's crazy. It is so crazy.
I guess that's where it's staying for the night.
That is why I started believing that it is possible that these things exist.
Mm-hmm. I know one thing, if you want to give a housewife somewhere to live, is to keep a wooden spoon next to your hearth or your stove nowadays. You keep a wooden spoon that you don't use, just put it next to the stove, and the housewives will gather around that.
I've got about 12 of those.
Yeah.
What, you want a whole army of housewives or something?
No, I have like 12 of these bamboo spoons I don't use for nothing because they're bamboo and they stain if I use them with anything. So
oh
they
my
just
God.
sit there.
Oh, there you go.
You're gonna have a little housewife hockey team.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. Every time my wife and I walk through this house at night, and the lights are dimmed, she sees cats out of the corner of her eye everywhere she goes. That's all she sees, and she stopped freaking out about it because it's just become a thing. And there's these different cats all over the house, but we don't have a cat.
Turns out you actually have special cats. They're just really stealthy.
Maybe Freya's trying to tell you something.
Yeah,
I think she's
sounds
trying
like
to
it.
tell her something.
Telling her you need some damn
Freya's
cats.
like, you need a cat.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a sign.
Unfortunately, our landlord, it's just not. Yeah, but I think Freya's trying to tell her something, and bless her heart, my wife is the most wonderful woman in the world. She's helping the tribe out. She's
Yes.
doing all the things. But I tell you what, this woman is Jewish through and through, and so be it. I love her. She doesn't judge. I tell you what, she doesn't judge us for nothing. So
That's
that
good.
alone says something.
Yeah.
That's cool. But so, like, isn't there other places that like these weird lights appear? I know there's the ghost lights down there in Odessa, Texas.
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot about those.
There's the Walhalla Hills in North Dakota.
I didn't know about that one.
There's
Yeah.
also Gahai Hill, where the region I'm from in upstate New York. I grew up not too far, and I wish my friend could call me, or could call in, and she could talk about it because she lived.
You there, Carrie? You cut out.
Sort of stuff. Huh?
You cut out a little bit there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
I said that I wish my friend could call on the show tonight. I didn't think to reach out to her, but she lived near Gahai Hill. It's in Salamanca, New York. They also call it Witch Hill. And weird lights come off the mountain. Like you could see them on Gahai Hill. And they legend, and forgive me if I'm butchering this, if anybody from Seneca Nation is listening to this, but if memory serves me correctly, the legend is people who practice bad medicine or owl medicine were banished up to that hill, and it translates to bad witches, basically. And I know the New York State Thruway had did some expansion work through there, and they wanted to widen the thruway. And the side where Gahai Hill is, A lot of accidents tend to happen there. A lot of like freak automobile accidents happen there. The other side of Gahai Hill is part of Allegheny National Park. Again, if I'm not mistaken. And if you get lost in Allegheny National Park and you end up up on the Gahai hillside, a lot of the locals are not going to go look for you.
Mm-hmm.
And they have
makes sense.
found people coming out of Gahai Hill that were disoriented and babbling and saying that they saw all kinds of weird stuff in the woods up there.
See, that sounds like Walhalla Hills here in North Dakota. There's, in fact, I don't know if you know this, but the government used to have a UFO hotline that you could call in to make reports of UFOs from lights and whatever.
Yeah.
And they had to cap the number of calls that came in a month by the 10th of the month from Walhalla Hills.
Oh, damn.
And then there's this place called the Badlands here in North Dakota. It's the Black Hills.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from North Dakota down to South Dakota and then over. And the lights that have been reported coming out of there, which, granted, at one point it was a reservation that, of course, we chase people out of. There's been a lot of lights reported out of there.
Yeah, I think that has to.
Hudson Valley is another place in New York.
Mm-hmm.
There is Hudson Valley. It's like central New York, and a lot of really creepy legends come out of there, including the Sleepy Hollow legend.
Well, there's a lot of bad blood up in that area.
There's certain parts of the Hudson Valley where they found like these really weird stone caverns that were man-made. They look like the old, like, quote-unquote druid caves. And they say that they see lights that come in and out of those caves and woods, and they hear chanting and see like really weird beings like through the trees at night.
Sounds like a good time.
I can post some of the links to these stories I can the description.
Yeah, you if you want to send them to me, I'll throw everything in the description. I usually do at the end.
Yeah, like I thrive off of this stuff. Like this is my topic. Let us know if you want us to do a paranormal show. And just talk about just paranormal stuff. Like not necessarily in relation to heathenry, but just some heathens that are talking about paranormal stuff. Let us know.
I know this is slightly off topic, but I gotta brag because there's nothing here in North Dakota, so every time there is something, we gotta brag about it. We're not even the best Dakota, so.
You guys have a lot of corn.
I've seen Fargo. Fargo.
That wasn't even filmed in Fargo. It was filmed in a small town 30 minutes north of Fargo. But in Minot, North Dakota, they found one of those markers, and I don't remember which party it was, but when the Viking came over, they left markers every time they stopped somewhere, and they had set up a colony for a winter.
Yeah.
And they set up these stone markers, and they told the story of the winter, their travel from point A to point B and their winter survival, and then they'd move on and make a new one. Well, North Dakota had 3 of those.
Oh, damn. Are you talking about a Nookshook?
I don't know. It was a giant stone. And I'm talking it's so big they had to bring in special equipment to move it. And it had the snake all the way around. And it had an entire story written in runes on the face of the stone.
Oh, that is crazy.
There was 3 of them between Fargo and Minot. And that tells you how bad
the winter
the
was.
weather is here.
Took them 3 years to move that far.
God.
They don't know if it was, one party, if it was 3 separate parties. They don't have any idea for sure. But they found those stones everywhere from New York to Oregon to California to Texas to Florida.
Damn.
So.
Damn.
And there's. Go ahead.
I just know that there's like the Inukshuk statues up throughout Canada, and they look like they're in the shape of like they have like legs, and then they have like a torso, and then like a head and arms, and they're used as a marker for hunters and to mark where to find their way to the next village.
No, these were just giant stones. I'll find a picture for you, Carrie. I'll send it to you.
Please do.
And then I just had a brain fart. I was going to say something.
Cat, how did you get in here? The cat just ninja'd her way into this room.
Cat's a little samurai.
I just turn around and she's there. Like, what the frick? She is. She's like super stealthy ninja.
And why would you need a marker like that, Carrie, in North Dakota? You do know that I can watch my dog. If she runs away, I can watch her run for like 3 weeks, right?
Well, I
Just a
mean,
flat
yeah,
plane.
true. But like, I would imagine, like, I mean, the harsh winters, you can't see through a snowstorm,
It's,
but you can see a ginormous rock, maybe.
it's,
You
it's for
can't see a
the
ginormous rock.
it's for the next group that walks through. The next group sees it and they're just like, "Oh, this winter's gonna be shit."
Well, I know that we
Well,
weren't good on recording history, but they kept some history when it was important.
Oh yeah.
well, I know there's been some like quote unquote totem poles out there that are pretty. You might find throughout like the further northeast you go, and they don't look like the regular totem poles you'll see. There might be like a monster looking thing sitting at the top of the totem pole.
Well, there's a reason for that. We had one here in Fargo for a long time. They finally took it down and stuck it in a museum out on the East Coast somewhere.
Was it Canada? Because there's one
No.
there's one in Ontario,
I
and
don't
it was
know.
a marker to warn people not to hunt in that area because that thing at the top of the totem pole is what you're going to be dealing with.
Well, what it was is there was this giant totem pole. It was in a park that I grew up playing in, right? And this thing was older than dirt.
Mhm.
You could tell just by looking at it. And kids were finally wearing a circle, running their hands around this pole. They were wearing a circle, finger rings around it. So they finally took it out. But it was a regular totem pole, and at the top it had this giant. You ever seen that movie? You ever seen that movie on Netflix, Troll or whatever? That Scandinavian movie.
Oh yeah.
The
Yeah.
face of that thing is what was on top of that post.
Oh damn.
Now, was it a warning? Like,
They don't know for sure because the tribe that was the native tribe that was in this area was completely wiped out.
yeah, the ones in the
South-
Northeast, they say it was like that is what ruled that part of the woods, and do not hunt there.
Well, they believe that it was around here. There's records, even in like the native, their records, their lore, that there were these men, these beasts in furs, that showed up and they lived. It wasn't a good living. It wasn't a bad living. They didn't interact. They just were near each other, but they left each other alone and then they moved on. Well, they believed that these totem poles were like a piece between the two of them, is what I was told. I don't know if it's true or not.
Oh, that's pretty neat actually.
And
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like Europe even has its own version of that stuff too.
yes, it does.
I mean, it's a worldwide thing. Like, I'm trying to bring some stuff up now. We got the Draugr, stuff like that. 10 mythical beings from Scandinavian folklore.
Oh boy.
Yes, the Draugr, the wild-looking undead creatures that torments those who have either wronged him during their lifetime or those who have incidentally or accidentally stumbled upon a treasure that was buried beneath the surface of the earth. Of course, there's the trolls. Even though, like, some philosophers say that, like, the whole concept of trolls are people who were banished from villages and towns and stuff like that.
I've never heard
And
of
they
that.
were, yeah, that's a theory that's out there.
Huh.
That they're trolls. They become trolls.
Mm.
There's the Huldra, a feminine mythical being who is renowned for her grace and beauty. She dwells into the mines and caves near deep forests and is said to lure men into endless labyrinths of underground tunnels. Wow. They can also lure men into forests where they will become lost afterwards, stealing their mortal souls. Is this a feminist demon or something? They're often described as gracious feminine beings with long cow-like tail. Like, okay, it's a chick with a cow tail. They can lose their beautiful physical appearance if they are convinced to marry a mortal in a church. This is very similar to a story from South America, I was told. My guy's from South America, and he's got some pretty interesting stories. And then you have I don't know how to pronounce it, the Nis, Nisse, associated with winter holidays. They're like these little goblin things with white beards.
Holy crap! They put those things up around here all the time during the winter.
Really?
Explains it.
Yes, they're like good luck. We'll put
You
them
know
all
what's
over their
funny?
homes.
Like the gnomes, like they look like little garden gnomes, I guess. That's the drawing.
Mm.
In 1842, someone, Thomas Lundby, made this drawing of one, and it looks like a little Travelocity gnome.
That's not what they put up around here, I tell you what.
There's a story out of Sacramento, California, that I came across on a paranormal thing. Talked about like an evil gnome thing that would like terrorize a family, and come to find out, like they found like somebody else's story of the same thing from like 10 years before that, and they got a hold of the person, and they used to live at that address.
The house, it's like they live in an apartment, but it's like a bunch of gnomes are just underneath them. So when they get too loud, the gnomes come up and just like, why are you guys being so damn loud?
Well, they say it's like tied to like some sort of river or something. Yeah, and it, like this gnome thing would just terrorize people. And I'm looking at this little drawing. I'm like, oh my god, that's exactly what is portrayed.
Oh, it looks like it's moved on to become the face of Travelocity, so they don't have to worry anymore.
I know. Little off topic. I apologize again, but I'm scatterbrained. Speaking of rivers, you guys are going out to that recreated ship, right?
I won't be
able.
Yeah, I can't make that either, actually.
Well, there's a ship here over in Moorhead. How the heck they got a full-size Viking ship recreation into Moorhead, Minnesota, I don't know. But this guy built it in Minnesota, launched it to Great Lakes, took it all the way out into the ocean, took it all the way over to somewhere in Scandinavia, and sailed the darn thing back.
That's impressive.
They have it over in this tent over in Moorhead in this museum. And about 10 years ago, they built a temple over there.
Really?
Yeah, it's the Christianized temple of the Norse people. It's called the Junkum Center. Don't ask me how to spell it, but it's pretty impressive. I grew up drooling over that ship.
That's pretty neat.
I'm sorry, Carrie, I got you off.
It's okay. I'm like looking at some of these mythical beasts and legends, and I'm like, wow, the Irish have a version of these too.
Did you know that the Scottish and English have a version of this basically a house elf, and they'll do favors for you and stuff until you wrong them, you don't put out food, or you cuss them, or you crush their house, and then they turn evil and they curse your home, and they'll skin you alive in your sleep if they get mad enough.
I was about to say that's kind of like Housewives, but they're a little bit extreme.
I was gonna say
the extreme end.
That sounds like my ex-husband.
I'm actually working those things into the book that I'm writing right now.
Oh boy, it's kind of like Housewives.
And move over, ancient Greece. We have a Kraken too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I think the Kraken was like a really big part of mythology at one point. I knew a lot about it at one point, but I kind of forgot.
Can I ask you?
Ours is a giant squid, and those do exist.
Yeah.
Can I ask you two a question? Have you ever noticed the similarities between the Nordic religion, the Romans, and the Greeks?
Yes and no. I see more similarities between ours and the Irish.
Well, there's a reason for that. That's the Great Migration. There's actually a lot of interchange during the Great Migration.
Yeah.
Well, they found the swastika and some of our symbols carved into like ancient Roman altars, so I'm not surprised.
Well, the Great Migration alone is amazing because there was hundreds of tribes that had never even seen each other, all worshiped the same faith in slightly different versions. Some had Odin, some didn't. Some had, Thor, didn't, or whatever, but it was all basically the same thing. And the Great Migration turned it into the religion that we know now.
Mm-hmm.
It's...
Oh, cat!
I just heard it meow. Oh my gosh.
She's just out of nowhere. She's just like, F you. I'm just going to bite your feet. Like, okay. You're going to be booted out of this room.
Oh, speaking of things being carved in things, I like how when they used to hire Vikings to guard the prince and the kings over the Middle East, they carve runes into a bunch of stuff over there. So like now there's runes like all over the place over there.
Ancient graffiti.
Yeah, ancient. There's
There's
ancient
ruins on the second
graffiti.
floor of the Taj Mahal.
Yeah,
You know that?
yeah. We were out here being the first taggers and stuff.
I love it.
I always thought that was really funny.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It shows how much they got around, definitely.
It's like ancient taggers right there.
Exactly.
Taggers. We're gonna put this rune here. That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So we are at almost at our hour here?
We are at 45 minutes and 55 seconds
No.
into the podcast.
So
Hey, Carrie, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, since we're heading to like the end part of our podcast here, you guys can find us at www.legacyoftyr.com. We have a GoFundMe set up to raise funds for our 501c3 status that we are trying to get, so we can like further our cause and help out heathen veterans and the veteran community in general. So any donation is appreciated, and we're trying to get some more articles written more frequently. If you'd like to submit something, just hit up the website, and I will publish something for you in our community corner.
Sweet.
Carrie, would you mind if I announce 2 of the guests that we have confirmed for November?
Okay.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Staff Sergeant Michael Goss, U.S. Army, will be coming on in November. I'm guessing earlier on in November, because the big guest that we have, Jose Belen, with Mission Zero, will be coming on the 17th of November. And they both are fighting veteran suicide. Goss is doing it with Project MMA. He's working with disabled amputees and PTSD troops to help them overcome struggles in life, show them that they are fully capable of still living and overcoming any challenge. And Belen is fighting to get us the care that we deserve in the VA and bring recognition to the fact that we're losing over 8,000 veterans a year to suicide.
Definitely something we need.
And that is definitely a show we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to be excited for both of those coming up in November.
We'd like to hear from you guys if you would like to hear. We've got contacts with people like guys that take guys out on. How do I say this, Carrie? We were talking about Jason Sellers before the show.
Guys that take people who have disabilities and due to amputation, injuries, or whatever, out to the mountains and stuff like that to show them that like they're still very capable of accomplishing great things physically.
We also got
is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. We've got a Silver Star recipient that would be willing to come on if you guys are interested in hearing, what he has to say.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
There's a few other guys that are willing to come on. I just, like a guy that biked across from East Coast to West Coast of the United States in remembrance of guys that fell in combat. He's a close friend of mine. I met him when I was getting med-boarded, and tell you what, that man's got some stories to tell.
Bet.
But like I said, whatever you guys, the listeners and you guys decide, I'll do whatever I can to make it happen.
And if you have an idea for a show, absolutely let us know.
Yeah, anyone can drop suggestions on the page, and we'll definitely take anything that gets put in there into consideration.
And if you guys have a guest suggestion, I'll try and make it happen for you. I can't promise you. If it's Mattis, I can't make that happen.
Yeah.
But but I'll do my best.
But we can try.
We can try. Who knows? Chaos might actually do it.
Never know.
Oh yeah, going back to whites and stuff, I was actually gonna give some good information on whites in case anyone wants to, put out a sacrifice or anything for their whites, inside and out.
After the show, I think we ought to.
Yeah, pretty much. We just talked a lot about them. They're probably listening now. But yeah, basically, really traditional thing you can leave out for whites is a bowl of oatmeal, or a bowl of milk as well. You can basically just leave it out around your house, or if you want to, sacrifice to the garden whites or all your whites outside, you just leave it outside. And I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but when you make sacrifices to pretty much like the gods, the whites, or your ancestors, anything really, and it's like food related, animals eating the sacrifice essentially sums up to like them being like the agents of the gods or the whites, and them basically like the animals are what you're sacrificing to. So the animals will eat it, and it's pretty much the sacrifice has been accepted by the whatever entity you're laying the sacrifice out for. Another thing you can do for whites is leave a little bit left on your plate when you're done, and just leave it out for the animals to eat. And that's another good sacrifice as well.
Yeah, or you can leave it by the foot of an oak tree. I've seen people do that before too. We do that every once in a while.
Yeah.
I usually start leaving those kind of offerings out this time of year in the winter time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I just kind of got into that habit.
The winter's when like the veil is most thin and everything, so of like basically between the realms.
Well, which is weird because while Purge is not, they say that the veil is thin too.
Yeah.
And that's April 30th, which is directly 6 months away from the Celtic Samhain. Think about that.
You know what's crazy? My grandpa is the most Roman Catholic man you'll ever meet in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And going hunting growing up, obviously it's colder than anything you can imagine up here in North Dakota during deer season.
Oh, yeah.
And my grandpa always would take half the heart and half the liver and put them by the nearest tree, and he'd leave them there. And I'd ask why, and he said, because it's bad luck not to.
Well, you'll be surprised, like when we grow up in, any region really, if we're born and raised there and we stay there, we tend to grow into accepting a lot of the local lore too, even if it's not within our religious practice. It's just something that quote unquote we do. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, the whites, I think it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people think the whites of basically North America are mainly like Native American spirit kind of whites. So
I disagree with that.
Oh, really?
I disagree with that because we've had like how many colonial settlers here?
Oh,
and
ton.
A lot of people that have come over here that practice old religions.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. You can't just narrow down to the Native Americans.
Yeah.
Like there was stuff that was here before the Native Americans even got here.
Yeah.
I mean, how many things migrated here from South America, like into like, Texas, New Mexico, California. I mean,
true.
You got to look at what the Smithsonian's saying now too, that there's possibly Europeans here before the Native Americans got here.
That is possible too, but I mean, you can't just limit that to like just the quote unquote Native Americans when our European, and I'm not downplaying the Native Americans at all, or bashing them, but our European ancestors put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into forming this land too. And,
most definitely.
They didn't just go to a mortgage company and buy a house. They built houses with their hands. They cut down the trees. They, dug the earth. They farmed it. Like a lot of even back in a home in East Otto, New York, where I'm from, like you'll see old family burial plots in somebody's backyard.
Oh, I've actually
1800s.
Cool story. I was actually when I was basically used to run around in the woods a lot as a kid over around where my grandmother lived in the western part of North Carolina, and I actually came across like a really old family burial ground, and it was that was pretty neat. And like one time one of the stones, like the headstones, washed down the hill, and we had to drag it back up and put it back in place.
Wow.
So nothing got upset.
There was there's a local legend where I'm from. There was a German, she was either German or Dutch, because you have to understand back then when they said Deutsch, a lot of the English thought they were saying Dutch.
Yeah.
They were
So
Germans, yeah.
yeah, so they could have been either or. Well, there was this woman who, according to the census says one thing about her, and then like other records say something completely different about her. So nobody actually knows how old she was
Mm-hmm.
or if she had kids or whatnot. But she used to have a little house in what is now known as Ashford Hollow,
Mm-hmm.
up there in upstate New York, and she died. Some say that her house burned down, and some say that she froze to death. Again, the records are very conflicting, but this time of year, especially when you get later into the fall, a lot of hunters will say that they will see a house on fire or campfires burning or a woman walking down the road from at the bottom of the hill there, but when they get down there nobody's there,
Hmm.
just her gravestone.
That's
But
crazy.
she's known as the witch of Ashford Hollow, and people thought she was a witch.
Hmm.
It reminds me of this thing that happened in Iowa, and this is public record. In Cedar Rapids, Iowa, there's a woman, only woman to ever be burned as a witch in the state of Iowa. And in the graveyard there's her headstone. They gave her a good old Christian burial and put her bones, what was left of them, into the plot and gave her a Christian burial. And during certain times of the year, you can't get a picture of the headstone. Everything's white. And you get inside so close to the headstone and nothing works. Not your phone, not a compass, nothing.
Hmm.
I went out there when I lived there for a while, and it's an odd experience, I tell you.
That sounds
Yeah,
insane.
the witch of Ashford Hollow. There's been at least two that I know of, documented cases where somebody would go out there and just mess around with the grave, and they would get into an automobile accident. One guy lived not too far from us, and he went up there one night and he peed on her grave. And about 3 days later,
Oh wow.
3 days later, he died in a car wreck.
Karma.
And then there was another person who went up there, messed around with her grave, and he got into a bad car accident too, but he didn't die. But
Yeah,
his father, who was a local politician, went and I guess he broke the headstone. That's what he did. And then his son got into a car wreck, and the local politician, he went and paid to have it, like, the broken part restored. But yeah, everybody knows about the witch's grave.
Yeah, don't mess with it.
Don't go out there and mess with it.
Yeah, that's when that one fell over. Like, I basically told my grandmother, and she was like, "Get that thing back up there right now." And then she was like, "Did you knock it over?" I was like, "No, obviously not." She was like, "Good. Just drag it back up there, put it where it's supposed to be, and leave it alone." And I was like, "Oh, damn, all right."
But I wanted it.
Yeah. You kidding me? I was gonna bring it in here.
It's gonna be our new Halloween decoration.
Yeah.
We would have made a freaking like a wall hanging out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then wonder why my house is haunted.
That's
Yeah,
a bad juju.
We ended up actually making like our family pet cemetery, kind of down from that just a little bit as well.
Oh wow.
So
anything weird ever happened out at your pet cemetery?
no, not really. It's just like it's like a really weird hollowed area though, because it's like it goes from like their family cemetery, you walk past it, and there's like more pet cemetery past that, so it's like it's crazy over there. So many headstones everywhere.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of pet cemeteries, like you'd walk past them or through them, and you hear like, animal noises, or you hear an animal following you, and there's nothing there.
Yeah. Oh, that brings up a weird memory. It was I buried my ferrets behind our other, like, my parents' house, basically, because they used to have ferrets and they passed away, and I had them for a long time. But it's weird because I'd go out at night to feed the dogs because they used to stay around back, and I'd basically go out at night and I'd like see little things scurrying around where they were buried, and they looked like ferrets, and there's just nothing else in North Carolina that's that kind of like shape, and I was like, ooh, that's weird.
Oh wow, that is crazy.
Yeah.
We used to have this cockatiel, and I remember this bird would chirp, like just once whenever somebody entered the room. It was like we called it the motion detector.
Yeah.
It would go chirp, somebody comes to the door, chirp. And to this day, every once in a while, my mom, out of nowhere, will hear that chirp. And that
Yeah.
bird has been dead for at least a decade.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That thing's hanging around.
Don't you get any ideas, cat? You better not come haunt me someday.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We
It's not gonna haunt you. It's gonna haunt your husband. It's gonna be all over his leg.
He's gonna wake up in the middle of the night and be like, "Oh, there's something on my leg." Poor Caesar.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
This cat's a lot of fun though.
Oh yeah,
enjoy it.
its shenanigans are hilarious.
She's brought a lot of life into this house.
Mm-hmm.
But we thought she was a kitten, and she's not a kitten. She's just a small adult. Right?
She's still a kitten. She'll always be a kitten.
You hear her? She's
Yeah.
meowing.
I keep hearing her purr.
She's not purring. She's just like meow, meow.
Oh yeah, I
Oh,
hear
it's
it.
coming across as a purr.
It's kind of like a cross between a meow and a purr. Meow, meow, meow.
Alrighty, we're at...
Oh, you're getting fixed.
Mow all you want.
Yeah.
We've hit the hour mark, by the way. We just hit it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to continue our usual Saturday schedule. This weekend, people not knowing what's going on with the hurricane and me just kind of feeling crappy, we just decided to postpone it till tonight. So, but please do like and subscribe.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Oh, no problem.
Oh, absolutely.
Come on whenever you want.
Come on the show anytime. Yeah, more the merrier.
Yep. And all links will be in the description after this. Like she said earlier, make sure you check out our GoFundMe, our website, and I'll link all of that in the Facebook page down below. And
I have one more announcement. Sorry.
Oh, what's up?
We have our Fort Bragg pub moot coming up on October 20th.
Oh yes.
Go to our Facebook page and you will see the details there. I believe it's scheduled for. Let me look. Because I picked a different place than last time. So I'm just bringing it up real quick. Community groups events. It's going to be
September 20th is Nate Reminder Day.
Oh
yes.
Don't make sure to remind Nate.
Nate. Yep. But yeah, Fort Bragg Pub Moot's going to be at 1700, and it's going to be at the On After Bar and Grub in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So it's going to be at 3004 Bragg Boulevard. And, we're looking forward to having you guys come on out, get to know us, talk shop, talk heathenry, have a beer. And afterwards, we'll see if we can go out and do something a little bit more seasonal. So whatever that means.
Seasonal? Or you go get some pumpkin spice lattes?
You guys gonna be doing what the Adams did, You're gonna go wake the dead and start pounding on something.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna get our pumpkin spice lattes, and we're gonna go look for ghosts or something. I don't know.
Hell yeah! Sounds like a great time. Nothing like a bit of pumpkin spice and spirits.
Yeah, we're gonna wear our yoga pants and our Uggs.
Time to get basic.
Okay.
He can't even. There we go. Now we're all the way basic. Perfect.
No, you're supposed to say what? You cannot then?
Oh
my god. I just can't even.
Oh my goodness.
You can't tell that I live in a house with two ladies and no other guys around, can you?
Oh yeah, definitely not. And don't forget, we got Pagan Pride Day coming up this weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, the link to Facebook will be in there, and the details are there. But we'll be set up with a table at Pagan Pride Day. We'll have a POW table and all that good stuff to honor the veterans, or the MIA.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we ever happen to get anybody in the Midwest up in the Fargo-ish area, feel free to hit up Legacy of Tyr, and we can see if we can't get something together for locals here.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
Definitely trying to expand. Alrighty, well, have a good night, everybody.
Yep, you too. And remember, link and subscribe and tell your friends about our show. And
Oh, yes.
we're definitely looking forward to doing this Saturday. I am going to hop off here because this cat needs to be put in another room.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.